What's up? This is Technically Correct with Tyler Bischoff. On today's show, is Pete Carroll going to be done after one season in Las Vegas? The Golden Knights are back in action. We kind of have a goalie face-off here. Can Akira Schmid hold serve against Carter Hart in a battle for the starting position? Is Major League Soccer going to come to Las Vegas in a couple of years? And UNLV basketball has a chance to be good now that they are getting healthy. If you want to sponsor Technically Correct, please email me at TechnicallyCorrectVegas@gmail.com. Reach out to me. We can make something happen. It'll be fun. We'll figure out how to do something great. TechnicallyCorrectVegas@gmail.com. That's the place to go. I'll appreciate it. I'll love you. We'll make everything great. We'll make everything cool. It'll be awesome. So TechnicallyCorrectVegas@gmail.com. Here we go. The Raiders are a disaster this season. Could be a good thing. We talked about it yesterday. The number one pick in the draft. They control their own destiny. It's better to be a complete disaster than to be floating outside the playoffs and drafting 9th overall. So not all is lost for the franchise, but it might all be lost for Pete Carroll. So Diana Rossini had a story on Saturday before this weekend's games, and she wrote this. Many around the league, and even some inside the Raiders building, are wondering if Pete Carroll will survive this season. If the Raiders do move on from him, this isn't a reset. It's a reset on a reset. Now, first off, the Raiders have been resetting on a reset, on a reset, on a reset, on a reset since Mark Davis became the owner. That's all they've done the entire time. There's a playoff run in there with Rich Bisaccia as the interim head coach. That's kind of it, right? There hasn't really been anything to build off of. It's just, that didn't work. Let's try again with Patriots West, with John Gruden, with Antonio Pierce who yells Raiders really loud. That's all that it's been over and over and over. I know it's hard to believe, but hiring a coach in his 70s who insists on winning, refuses to do any sort of rebuilding until the team is 2-11, refuses to play young players until the team is 2-11. Hiring a coach in his 70s like that with a roster that's nowhere close to contention has turned out poorly. Who would have thought? But the Raiders can't let Pete Carroll coach next season. They can't. It was a bad idea to hire him. It's an even worse idea to let him coach next year. If you want some grace, let him retire, let him go out without being fired, fine. But if Pete Carroll insists on coming back next year, you need to fire Pete Carroll, because Pete Carroll was hired to bring stability to the Raiders, maturity, stabilize the franchise, give them some competency. And we haven't seen that anywhere. On the field, it's a disaster. They're horrible every week. The record shows that. The first pick, the potential for the first pick shows that. And off the field, I mean, what have we seen? We haven't seen fair accountability, right? The special teams coordinator gets fired because special teams hasn't been good. It's still been bad since then. The offensive coordinator gets fired because the offense has been bad, right? Both of those areas were bad. But what's the worst position group on the entire team? The offensive line. Has the offensive line coach been fired? No. Why is that? It's Pete Carroll's son, right? That's not competency or maturity or anything like that. And now we've seen twice the Raiders get rid of somebody and then trash that guy by leaking stories to the media afterwards. It happened with Christian Wilkins. They're trying to void his guaranteed money. Someone from the Raiders leaked out there that Wilkins wasn't taking his rehab seriously, and then that he wanted to go with a different path than the Raiders medical staff was suggesting. And then it happened again with Chip Kelly. He gets fired, and then someone from the Raiders leaks to the media that Chip Kelly was screwing up play calls to Geno Smith during games, that Chip Kelly was calling plays that the Raiders never installed, right? Why are those things being leaked? That's not maturity. That's petty. That's what petty looks like. That's not what the Raiders were supposed to be when they hired Pete Carroll in his 70s, who's been coaching for decades across the NFL and college football. What the Raiders wanted under Pete Carroll hasn't even been close to happening. So why would you bring that back? Are you suddenly convinced that next year he's going to start fixing all these things with the Raiders? It just seems far-fetched to believe that that would actually happen. And again, you've got a coach in his 70s whose goal is to win now because, again, he's in his 70s. How many more times is he going to coach? I don't blame Pete Carroll for that. But how far away is this team from contending? Because I think they're multiple off seasons away from building a competent roster, right? They're to the point where they should be looking at 2029. And Pete Carroll has shown us he won't do that. Pete Carroll has shown us that he's not going to focus on developing players until the season's completely gone, when in reality, that should be the goal from the start. Pete Carroll wants to remind us, I win 10 games every year. He's 2-11 now. Doesn't play the rookies unless it's a running back they drafted in the top 10 and they have to justify that pick. But Pete Carroll doesn't fit this organization's timeline. And letting him come back for another season would be another mistake by Mark Davis or Tom Brady. Which brings us to this problem. This story that Diana Rossini wrote painted Tom Brady as the head decision maker for everything that the Raiders do, right? He wanted Ben Johnson to be the head coach. Ben Johnson went to Chicago, and so they pivoted, or Brady pivoted, to Pete Carroll. Brady wanted Matt Stafford to be the quarterback. That failed. The Rams weren't trading him. And Brady apparently said, no, thank you. We don't want to sign Sam Darnold. And they pivoted to Geno Smith. He wanted Chip Kelly. He got that guy, got that one, but still a failure. So if you're running through the three big decisions the Raiders made, apparently with Tom Brady, all three of them have been horrendous. I don't know who wanted Ashton Genty in the first round, but that's the fourth big decision of this past offseason. Also went poorly. But if Tom Brady, is he the one making these decisions? Because they've all been bad. And here's the biggest issue, I think. This line from Diana Rossini's story. Tom Brady hasn't been in the facility more than a handful of times, but he is communicating with Guerrero. That's his trainer who's in the building, apparently. Owner Mark Davis, general manager John Spytek, coaches and players. So is Tom Brady one of the biggest, if not the biggest voice, decision maker in this organization, right? Is that apparently is the case when it comes to hiring a head coach, landing a quarterback, hiring the offensive coordinator. Brady is one of the strongest voices, if not the number one voice. And he doesn't show up to work. Tom Brady's been in the building less than 10 times. That's what a handful means. It means 5. He's been in the building less than 10 times. The Raiders are letting somebody who's not even around run the organization. Does he even know how to get there when he's in Las Vegas? Does he have to ask when he's in the building where the bathroom is? Like, he's barely been here, and the Raiders are letting him run the show? This is hilariously inept for an organization that's always screwing up. I mean, this is what they always do. And if the grand plan of Mark Davis is to let Tom Brady show up to work 5 times a year and then have Tom Brady make the biggest decisions, I've got bad news. The Raiders are going to be terrible. The Raiders are going to suck. That's not a way to run an organization. You should not be letting the guy that's on Fox every Sunday, that's preparing to do games, call games for Fox. That should not be the guy running your organization. The guy making all these decisions should be in the building on a regular basis, not relying on his trainer to do it, not relying on phone calls or Zoom calls with Pete Carroll and John Spytek to get information. That's not going to work. It's not even, it's so obvious that's not going to work. Like, hey, fix the team while you're calling the Cowboys game on Sunday. Like, it's just, I don't understand how that can be the plan. If you're Mark Davis and you want Tom Brady to buy a piece of the team because it's cool to have Tom Brady buy a piece of the team, cool, let it happen. But if you're Mark Davis, you can't let Tom Brady become the number one voice in the organization, become the football guy that you want to put all your trust in, and then not let him show up to work. Like that you can't let that happen if you're Mark Davis, but it's Mark Davis. And he's more concerned with being relevant and interesting and cool than he is with building a competent organization. And we see that over and over and over, right? It's why he hired John Gruden. Hell, it's probably why he hired Pete Carroll at the end of the day. And it's why he wanted Tom Brady in, because he just wants name recognition. That's what Mark Davis wants. He wants to be interesting. He doesn't want his team to tank. He wants his team to be in the playoff hunt, right? I'm convinced Mark Davis's goal every season is when they put up the graphic in December and it shows you the division leaders, the wild card teams, and the teams that are in the hunt. Mark Davis just wants to be on that graphic. He doesn't care if the Raiders are 11-2 leading the division or if they're 6-7 and they are just in the hunt. He just wants to be on that graphic in December. That's his goal. And that's a terrible goal because as an organization, you should be trying to win a Super Bowl, right? And if you can't win the Super Bowl that year, you should be building for the future. And that's not what they do. And so here we are with an owner that's proven that he can't put together competency, allowing a guy who's not around to run the team with a coach in his 70s who's trying to win 10 games now, even though there's 4 left in the season and they only have 2. That's not going to work. And it's pretty evident that that plan is not going to work. So Pete Carroll should not be back next season. But ultimately, this is not a Pete Carroll problem. Firing Pete Carroll or letting Pete Carroll retire does not solve the issues the Raiders actually have. It's coming from Mark Davis. It's coming from Tom Brady. And that's where these issues are going to have to get resolved. Tom Brady's going to have to get a lot better at this in a hurry while only showing up to work 5 times a year. Also on the Raiders, Ashton Jeanty. If you saw his numbers against the Broncos, they weren't good. It was similar to a lot of games he's had this year. 10 carries for 30 yards, 2 catches for another 8 yards. You guys remember when Jeanty was going to be more involved in the passing game because they fired Chip Kelly? Yeah, me too. That's gone. Jeanty has now gone 8 straight games with a yards per carry under 4. He's only had 2 games this year where his yards per carry was over 4. By the way, 4.3 yards per carry, that is the NFL average. So Jeanty's production has been below average in 11 of 13 games just on a per carry basis. It's amazing how quickly the Raiders managed to prove everybody right about drafting a running back in the top 10. And everyone who criticized the Raiders about why would you draft a running back in the top 10, I mean, right from the jump. It's not even like, it wasn't even a question. It wasn't even like, oh, there's a good Jeanty game, right? Oh, look at what he did to help the Raiders win. No, not at all. They've been horrendous as a team, and they've got absolutely no running game. And is he good? Probably. But I'll be honest, I'm not really sure. The offensive line is bad, but Jeanty doesn't do anything. He's not the number one problem, but I don't think we've seen enough from Jeanty to say, oh, yeah, he's good. He's good. Did you know Jeanty has 1 carry this year of over 20 yards? He had a 64-yard touchdown back in week 4. That's it. He doesn't have another run this year for over 20 yards. That's wild. I know the offensive line is bad, and on most of his carries, he's getting hit at behind the line of scrimmage, maybe a yard or 2 down the field. I got it. But there hasn't been one time where, oh, yeah, he broke out of that and ran for 27 yards. Well, I guess there's been once. He hasn't done it more than that. That's wild that hasn't happened. So is he good? I don't know. The running back that took 6th overall has 1 carry of over 20 yards. It's hard to be like, oh, yeah, Jeanty's fine. They've got that figured out. Maybe they fix the offensive line and he's great next year. But here's a fun comparison for you. Jeanty, taken in the first round, 6th overall pick. He has 665 rushing yards this season. Kyle Monangai was taken in the 7th round of the draft by the Bears. He has 648 rushing yards this season. Ashton Jeanty has 56 more carries than Kyle Monangai. and only 17 more yards. If you ever wanted to see why you don't draft a running back in the first round, this is it. The guy taken 6th overall can't outproduce a guy taken in the 7th round who's been operating as the number 2 running back in Chicago. And this highlights, again, the hiring of Pete Carroll because the Raiders failed to get Ben Johnson. Tom Brady wanted Ben Johnson. We're seeing why with the Bears, but he chose the Bears like any sane person would have this offseason, and the Raiders pivoted to Pete Carroll. And now we've seen the guy who's an offensive coach, an offensive genius, is able to establish this great running game and use a backup running back taken in the 7th round to get better production than what Pete Carroll's team is getting out of the running back taken in the 1st round. That is why you don't draft a running back in the 1st round, because their value is tied so heavily to the rest of the team. The offensive line has to be good for a running back to be good. The scheme, the coaching has to be good for a running back to be good. The Raiders haven't had either of those things this year, so it doesn't matter how good Ashton Jeanty is. They could have taken Jeanty or Kyle Monangai and would have gotten the same production. In fact, they would have been better off taking an offensive lineman in round 1 and actually playing him, Monangai in round 7. They probably would have a better running game than they do right now. So yes, Kyle Monangai has had a better season than Ashton Jeanty. Couple of the things on the Raiders. First off, Pete Carroll yesterday got asked about Geno Smith. He said that they won't know for a couple of days what Geno Smith's status is. We'll start getting injury reports before then, so we'll get some form of a status. But he left Sunday's game with a shoulder injury. Kenny Pickett finished the game at quarterback. Carroll's been vague with his description so far, right? He said that it locked up on Sunday, and then on Monday said that they won't know for a couple of days. I assume Geno Smith is the starting quarterback if he's able to play. I assume that Pete Carroll's not going to bench Geno Smith. I'd be shocked if Kenny Pickett plays in any scenario other than Geno Smith being ruled out, because I also don't think Geno Smith is going to say, I don't want to play, because he's probably playing for his next contract. Is he going to be back next year? He kind of needs to show something and say, hey, I'm not that bad. I can do something out here. Also, wanted to get to this injury-wise. Kyu Blue Kelly, the cornerback that got carted off, torn patella tendon. So his season is over. Probably going to be fine for next season, but a bummer of a blow for the Raiders to lose a cornerback who had a better than expected season in the backfield from a guy who was basically a practice squad signing a year ago. Also, a quick note on the snap counts of the rookies. Talked about yesterday, they got to play. So Caleb Rogers played all 50 offensive snaps, 100% of the offensive snaps. Caleb Rogers played at right guard. So they finally gave him just a full chance to go and play. I don't know how you feel about PFF grades, but he got the 2nd highest PFF grade of any Raiders offensive lineman in that game. He had the best pass blocking grade of any Raiders offensive lineman. He did not allow a pressure in 38 pass blocking snaps. That's good, right? That's not just better than bad offensive line. That's good. The wide receiver splits, again, 50 offensive snaps. Trey Tucker was the number 1. He played 47 of those 50 snaps, but Jack Best played 41. He did operate as the number 2 wide receiver for the entirety of the game. Third on that list was Tyler Lockett, who played 30. So 11 more snaps than Tyler Lockett in this game. We also saw some deeper rookies, right? Rodgers was a 3rd-round pick. Best was a 2nd-round pick. It's wild those guys aren't playing at positions where the Raiders don't have good players. But we saw Tonka Hemingway and J.J. Pegues, 2 defensive tackles. Hemingway played 24 and Pegues played 11. Those were both day 3 picks later in the draft. And the Raiders' defensive line has been relatively fine. The interior of that's been fine this year. That's not been a big issue. But we even saw those guys get to play. So Hemingway was involved in the first sack of the game for the Raiders. So we saw a good chunk of the rookies getting to play in this game. And now it's time for Bischoff's Briefs. Bischoff's Briefs is brought to you by Go Army, beat Navy. Shout out to Rob, a great listener of the show, has been listening to me for more than just this show. Rob, really appreciate you listening and appreciate you sponsoring Bischoff's Briefs. Army Navy, they play this weekend, and we want Army to win now because Rob has sponsored Bischoff's Briefs, and you can buy my loyalty in the Army Navy game that easily. Go Army, beat Navy. Here is Bischoff's Briefs. The Golden Knights play the New York Islanders today. It is a 4 p.m. start time out here in Vegas. The Golden Knights have won the first 2 games of this road trip. First thing I'm sort of interested in seeing is the goaltender battle between Akira Schmid and Carter Hart. Hart has had 2 good starts. Schmid has had a good one in between. What does Schmid look like? Because we, and by we, I mean fans and media, are very reactionary to small sample sizes, especially when those small sample sizes are the only sample sizes that we have. So Carter Hart's played 2 games and looked pretty good. Akira Schmid having a single bad game is going to lead to a lot of questions, both fan and media-wise, about, okay, how many games should Carter Hart be getting? Right? I don't think anybody thinks Carter Hart should be playing 90% of the games, but should it be more than just a 50-50 split? So what does Akira Schmid look like? Because he's got to hold serve in terms of how good the goaltending can be. I don't know that Bruce Cassidy will be that reactionary, but we certainly will be. If Akira Schmid goes out there and plays poorly and they lose this game, it'll be, Carter Hart should play more because he's good, right? Because that's all we've seen in 2 games. Now, they play the Islanders. Islanders have a good goalie, Ilya Sorokin. He's been great again this season. He's 10th in goal saved above average. His save percentage is .912. He actually, every single year of his career, has had a positive goal saved above average. So Ilya Sorokin has been good. Not a big question there on the Islanders. Best goaltender. I do like looking at this. The Islanders have the 11th best record in the NHL, but they are under 50% in Corsi and expected goals. So it feels like another team where, okay, the record's solid, but are you actually that good of a team? Because you're, generally speaking, getting beat at 5-on-5 when it comes to shots and also when it comes to chances. That's not a good sign for a team. For the Golden Knights, 4-game winning streak, by the way. So they're playing pretty well. In those 4 wins, though, 1 win was in a shootout, 1 win was in overtime, and 1 win was a 1-goal win in regulation. Right? So of the 4 wins, 3 have been basically as close as a game can possibly be. And the Golden Knights for this entire season have played 28 games, and 11 of them have gone to shootout or overtime, ended in a shootout or overtime. And I know that's been a league-wide trend. That's not an only Golden Knights trend. So it's been league-wide, but games not getting decided till overtime is happening quite a bit. And for the season, just at 5-on-5, the Golden Knights have scored 54 and allowed 51. And here's what I don't know, and maybe won't know for a while, maybe the entire season. Are the Golden Knights just simply this above-average team that plays a lot of games that go into overtime because they're just not that much better than most opponents in the NHL? Are they just simply this above-average team? You go to overtime, you're scoring just a few more goals at 5-on-5 than your opponent. That's all signs of an above-average team. Or are we seeing the floor of the team? Right? Is this like as bad as they get? I know they've won 4 in a row, so not right now. But is this what they've done so far? Is this kind of as bad as they get, and this team's going to take off? Because I don't think it'd be a surprise to many people if the Golden Knights started winning more games and established themselves as the best team in the Pacific Division by a decent margin. They probably are the best team in the Pacific Division, but like clear head and shoulders, I should get that phrase right, above everybody else. It wouldn't be a shock if all of a sudden they're leading the division by a good chunk of points. A month from now at the Olympic break, we can say that is sort of a natural point. I don't think that'd be a big surprise, but we haven't seen that from them. So I don't really know. Is this just a team that's slightly above average, will win more games than they lose, but will also go to overtime a lot and is not going to be this dominant force? Or do they separate in the Pacific and kind of say, hey, we're closer to Colorado than we are Anaheim or Edmonton or whoever it is that's going to actually finish second in the Pacific. That's what I don't know about this team, and we'll see how quickly or not we can learn that. Also on the Golden Knights, they called up Dylan Coghlan, a defenseman from the AHL. They sent down Manga, so possible injury situation there, and Coghlan could be playing. I know Vegas tweeted out that there's a chance it's just like waiver related and how often you want guys on the NHL roster, especially when they're not playing. So you might spread that out so it's not all on one individual player. But there is a chance there's an injury. Golden Knights, when they go on East Coast trips, the only media that's there usually is team employee media, so you don't really get great reports on what's happening with the team. In the NFL, the Kansas City Chiefs will not win the AFC West. The division was open this year. Mahomes and the Chiefs can't win a close game. It was there for the taking, and the Raiders are 2-11. But 9 straight AFC West titles for Kansas City. That's coming to an end. It will be Denver, maybe the Chargers. They're actually not out of it despite being beat up. But Kansas City's also in real danger of missing the playoffs. They lost to Houston on Sunday night to fall to 6-7. DVOA projections has them at 8.9 wins and a less than 20% chance to make the playoffs. Kansas City 6-7, so winning out means 10-7. The current cut line in the AFC playoffs is 8-5. Which, by the way, is Houston, who just beat Kansas City and would have the tiebreaker. Kansas City did beat Indy, who's also 8-5, but Indy's right now on the outside looking in. So that could help, but they need somebody like Houston to fall out, or the Chargers. But this was, I think, the most interesting part. Jesse Newell covers the Chiefs for The Athletic. And he tweeted out that Rashee Rice left the locker room before the media was allowed in to ask questions, and that Travis Kelce declined interview requests twice in the locker room after the game. Rice had a critical 4th down drop. Travis Kelce had the circus play where he turned to catch into an interception by catching it and then handing it behind his shoulder to the defender. And neither one took questions after the game. What a bunch of front runners. Answer some questions after a loss. I mean, have you really been that spoiled that you're like, oh my God, we're 6-7? I can't answer a question. No, how dare you ask me a question after a loss? Come on. Answer some questions. You're having one of the biggest collapses of the NFL season. Answer some questions about it. In baseball, the A's, the soon-to-be Las Vegas A's, are apparently not going to ask for public money until next year. There's a story in the RJ where Steve Hill of the LVCVA said, at this point, the A's have not asked for public funding, and they don't yet have a guaranteed maximum price with their contractor. It will probably be sometime next year when they ask for public funding. So the A's are going to use $350 million in public funding. I don't know that it matters so much whether they take the public funding today or whether they take it in June of next year. But again, we have somebody involved in this process, the head of the LVCVA, and is the head of the stadium authority as well, Steve Hill. He's got to approve basically everything that the A's try to do. They don't ever not approve it, but he's got to approve it, saying they don't have a guaranteed maximum price. We got a couple of more details on that in this story in the Review Journal. First off, the projected price is around $2 billion. So that's not an update, but just shows you that it's a projected price and not even a firm projected price. But the chairman of the A's, Sandy Dean, he said the price is unknown because of Trump's tariffs, specifically on steel. Absolutely shocking. Those are a problem. Who could have seen that coming? But they still don't know how much it cost to build this ballpark. And those costs could change on a whim of Donald Trump. So that's not great. And it's still the biggest question I have is, what does this thing cost? And ultimately, is John Fisher going to fund it? Because from everything they say, if it stays at $2 billion or around $2 billion, it sounds like they're fine, right? It sounds like this is actually going to happen. But my question has always been, what happens if that price keeps rising? Because it rose 3 times in less than 2 years. What happens if it keeps going up? What happens if it becomes 2.5? If it suddenly became $3 billion, is John Fisher still in at those prices? Because we're not getting that guaranteed price from the A's. They're not coming out and saying, this is the price of the ballpark. Here's the funding. Everything's good to go. We haven't gotten that. So there's still this uncertainty around it. Inter Miami won MLS Cup over the weekend. Lionel Messi had 2 assists as they beat Vancouver 3-1. Now, why am I telling you on this show that I promote as a Las Vegas local sports podcast about Miami beating Vancouver in MLS Cup? Well, it's because Vancouver could very soon be the Las Vegas Whitecaps. I don't think we'd keep that name. So there's a story in The Athletic about the Whitecaps and their stadium situation in Vancouver. They play at BC Place, but apparently they don't have a lease after this season. And the commissioner of Major League Soccer, Don Garber, said last month, we want a better lease at BC Place, and the club has made a very specific request about that. Their restrictions, speaking of the arena, their restrictions and those challenges make it untenable for the Vancouver Whitecaps. Economically, they don't participate in any revenue. What the hell does that mean, by the way? They don't participate in any revenue? Is he trying to say they don't have revenue? Because that's impossible. They sell tickets. They sell jerseys. They get the television deal or the Apple TV deal, right? They've got to have revenue. Did he mean to say they don't generate a profit? Is that what he meant? It's such a weird phrase, don't participate in revenue, that it makes me think the commissioner of Major League Soccer is trying to mislead everybody, if not outright lie, by phrasing something so awkwardly to make it sound like the Vancouver Whitecaps have no money when surely they do. So I don't know what the hell don't participate in revenue even means, but any good sports commissioner, when there's a stadium problem, a lease problem, or you want public money to build a new one, whatever, is going to do this. You're going to talk about revenue, going to talk about not making money, and ultimately going to use relocation as leverage. You use the threat of moving as a way to get what you want out of your current city. And The Athletic reported this. The sources briefed on discussions said at least 6 cities are monitoring the situation with Vancouver, including groups with interest in Detroit, Phoenix, Sacramento, Indianapolis, Edmonton, and Las Vegas. That's us. 6 cities. So Major League Soccer is trotting out leverage. I mean, Edmonton? There's no way they're moving a team to Edmonton, right? They're just trotting out cities for leverage. And Las Vegas is one of them. They've been one of them for a while. Now, in this specific scenario, how would it work to bring this franchise, the Vancouver Whitecaps, to Las Vegas? First, the timing appears to be an issue. MLS is threatening relocation if there isn't a long-term solution for the Whitecaps at the end of the 2026 season. So that would imply the team is going to move and play somewhere for the 2027 season. So can an MLS team play in Las Vegas in 2027? The only answer would be Allegiant Stadium. And there's not going to be a new stadium built before 2027 comes around. And if Major League Soccer is not happy with the current lease agreement that the Whitecaps have in Vancouver, there is no way they'd be happy with whatever the scenario would be here in Vegas, because Mark Davis, first off, is probably not even going to want an MLS team in his stadium. And if he does, it's because he can make money off of it. But if Mark Davis is making money off of it, then I'm guessing the MLS team would not be participating in revenue here in Vegas as well. Also, Major League Soccer coming here, just on the pecking order, they're going to be behind the Raiders, but they're also probably going to end up behind UNLV. So they'd be third on the pecking order at Allegiant Stadium. So I don't think that MLS wants to play at Allegiant Stadium. Maybe if it's a short-term solution, right? And the only way that would happen, that MLS would come here in 2027, play at Allegiant Stadium for a couple of years, is if there was a soccer-specific stadium getting completed in 2029 or something like that, right? I think they would be fine with, okay, didn't work in Vancouver. We got out of there because of the lease. We're going to Vegas, and there's a stadium being built for us. It's soccer specific. It's exactly what we want. So we'll tough it out and we'll play at Allegiant Stadium for a couple of years. I do think that could happen. But is there going to be a soccer specific stadium built in Las Vegas? Because Major League Soccer is going to want that, right? And if the Whitecaps do relocate, one of these 6 cities is probably going to give it to them. Maybe that's how Edmonton gets a team. They give them a soccer-specific stadium. But would Vegas do that, right? We've seen, whether it's the state level, the county level, the LVCVA, we've seen that this city are willing to just throw public money at sports teams. So maybe, but I'd be surprised if there was an approval for another $300 million to build a soccer-specific stadium. Maybe there's an owner that would buy the team and do it on his own. That would be ideal for everybody involved, except that owner, I guess. But that seems unlikely. So I'm skeptical that this would actually happen. Also, to give you the other soccer update, the United States has a decent draw for the World Cup. Their group is Australia, Paraguay, and then the winner of a European playoff. Turkey is the best team there, but there's also Slovakia, Romania, and Kosovo. Those 4 play a little tournament, and the winner is the team that's the final team in the U.S. group. If Turkey makes it, the only problem with this group is that there isn't an easy team in the group. If you go by ELO ratings, the U.S. would actually be the worst team in the group if Turkey makes it. But there'd be no top 10 teams in the group if Turkey makes it. So there's no terrible teams, but there's also no one that you say, okay, well, the U.S. can't beat them. In fact, we just beat Australia and Paraguay earlier this year in a couple of friendlies. So the U.S. can absolutely beat all of those teams in the group. And if it's not Turkey, if it's one of the other 3, then there is a bad team in the group. So we're cheering against Turkey to give us a bad team. But either way, this group, it is winnable for the United States. But it's also a group where it's not going to take a lot for the U.S. to not get out of the group, to even lose all 3 games. I'd be shocked if that happened. But the teams are good enough that a couple things go against the U.S. and they lose their first 2 games, and all of a sudden they're out of the World Cup or fighting for their lives in the last group stage game. So it is entirely possible. The other thing that I wanted to get to in UNLV news, we're going to get to basketball a little bit later. I know I had at least one complaint about that. If you listened to the show yesterday, you heard my one-man protest of basketball games, college basketball games on Sunday. But I did want to get to this. UNLV has a jersey sponsor. Coming up next year, the NCAA is going to allow jersey sponsors. At least that's the expected result. They haven't officially approved that. And UNLV is now the first team to actually announce that they have one. LSU said that they had a deal lined up, but they haven't actually announced it. UNLV announced yesterday that Accesso Biologics is going to be their jersey patch sponsor. They're headquartered in Las Vegas, and they are the leader in regenerative I can't talk today. Regenerative medicine and innovation, right? So it'll be on the football, men's basketball, women's basketball, and baseball jerseys next season, assuming all this gets approved. The Athletic reported that this deal is a 5-year deal worth $11 million. So that's $2.2 million per season for UNLV, which sounds like a good chunk, right? I would say one question I have, Accesso was the on-field sponsor this year for UNLV, so they already had a sponsorship. Does this deal include that, or is $2.2 million in addition to that? So it's $2.2 million, but it might be for more than just the jersey sponsor. The other big question I have is once we start hearing these deals from SEC schools and Big Ten schools, what's the difference, right? Because obviously Ohio State's more valuable. Their jersey patch is going to be more valuable than UNLV. But is Ohio State getting $5 million a year to UNLV's 2.2, or is Ohio State getting like $15 million? I honestly do not know. I don't have a clue what that number is or should be. So that's something I'm curious to see, is how big that gap is. I also wonder from a fan's standpoint, do you care? Like, this has long been a revenue stream of soccer teams. You watch a Liga MX game and there's 12 jersey sponsors. Do you care? Like, it's not great because you're now watching your favorite team play and getting an ad just while watching a highlight or your favorite play. But I have found that I kind of don't like it. I don't want to see it, but it's not going to affect my enjoyment of the game, right? When it comes to baseball's been doing it, hockey's been doing it. It doesn't really affect my enjoyment of the game. So, like, I'd prefer it not happen, but it's not a big enough deal for me to actually care about anything. And I do want to mention this. The press release that UNLV sent out about this said UNLV Sports Properties will help Accesso gain fan insights through Learfield's fan base database. Accesso's sponsorship partnership will leverage fan data combined with digital and sponsorship elements to engage the UNLV fans throughout the year. So UNLV and Learfield are selling your data. That might actually be why they paid $2.2 million a year for this. They might not care that very much about the jersey sponsor. They just want your data. Last thing in briefs today, I do want to step outside of Las Vegas sports because one of the funniest things that could happen in the NFL is possible now, and that is Phillip Rivers at 44 years old in a playoff game. The Colts lost Daniel Jones for the season with an Achilles injury. The backup is Riley Leonard, who also is dealing with an injury. So the Colts are apparently working out 44-year-old Phillip Rivers today. Rivers has been coaching high school football since he retired. High school season's over, might as well go back and play in the NFL. So, Phillip Rivers it is. I kind of hope the Colts sign him and they make the playoffs and Phillip Rivers is playing for the Colts in the playoffs. That would be kind of funny. But that has been Bischoff's Briefs. Thank you to Rob for sponsoring Bischoff's Briefs. Go Army, beat Navy. It's the most important football game of the weekend now as we look for Army to knock off Navy. If you hear any fun noises during this segment, it's because Churro, my wonderful bulldog, is sitting in my office while I record this show. So, yeah, he thinks it's time to lick his paws and rub his back. So, if you hear anything during the end of the segment, or you might have already heard it, this is the problem. It's right here. It's Churro. All right, now he's just off camera in my recliner. So, told you yesterday that I was going to get more into UNLV basketball today. Not a fan of them playing on Sundays, but they beat Stanford, one of their two biggest wins of the season. And I wanted to talk about Emmanuel Stephen. 7-footer transferred in from Arizona, made his debut. He missed the start of the season due to injury, but he played just under 30 minutes in this game, basically got a full workload, 18 points, 10 rebounds, also committed 4 fouls because UNLV, if they have a good player that's healthy, that guy's in danger of fouling out every game. But 2 things stuck out. First off, on defense, he was not credited with a blocked shot in this game. But I think he qualifies for the cliche of, well, he altered a lot of shots because he did in this game. And maybe teams other than Stanford will be better at attacking him. He did get out of position a couple of times defending in the post. And key here, Stanford never really drew him away from the perimeter, right? There was only a couple of possessions where he got out on the perimeter defending. We played a 1-3-1 zone, so that helps keeping him near the basket. But maybe other teams will be better. But overall, I think UNLV's defense is going to be better just with his presence at the rim, turning some made layups into some missed layups. That was one of the biggest areas that I thought he impacted despite not having a blocked shot. Then on the offensive end, he scored a lot of different ways. I'm sorry, I'm looking at Churro, who's licking his paws over here. He scored a lot of different ways. There were some post isolations. He had some sort of 8-foot kind of one-handed push shots. They weren't like true hook shots. He scored on a dump-off pass when he was in the dunker spot and just caught a dump-off and dunked it. He had some second chance points. He also had an and one where he's running the floor in transition, catches the ball, did well not to get called for a charge, could have barreled over the defender, but stopped himself, planted his feet, scored, and got the foul. There was good variety there. And I put it this way. I don't think we saw anything on the offensive end where it was like, oh, like that's unstoppable. They're going to be able to just give him the ball and nobody's going to be able to stop that. I don't think there was anything that was like, oh, that's his move. That's what he's going to do. But he scored in a lot of different ways, which I think is optimistic because he's not a one-trick guy offensively. It's not just, hey, he's going to get offensive rebounds. Like, he created some of his own shots. We saw a little bit in transition, and he was able to get some offensive rebounds or score when other guys created some space for him. So the variety was good. And he drew 4 fouls as well. He committed 4, but he also drew 4 fouls, which was tied for the team high. That's obviously very valuable. But he impacted things on both ends of the floor. My initial thought on him is that we're going to see some inconsistent performances, most likely on the offensive end. But I think he's going to impact the game in enough ways that he's going to be valuable no matter what every single game. And he's going to be one of their most important players the rest of the season. I think we saw that in just one game with Emmanuel Stephen. So a good debut from him, and they won. So that makes it even better. But offensively in this game, I felt like UNLV's offense was just two things. One, go fast, score in transition, which we've seen. They're one of the top 20 teams in pace. They want to do that. But that's what they wanted to look for first. Dre Gibbs-Lawhorn is very good at pushing the tempo, being really aggressive. There's been a lot of games where he's inefficient, but he's very good at least pushing the tempo all the time. That we've seen. The other way UNLV scored was just 15-foot isolations. They gave Emmanuel Stephen a few of these. Tyron Jones can do it, but mainly it was Kamani Hamilton. Just get him the ball 15 feet away and just get out of the way and let him attack one-on-one. In fact, both of the final 2 possessions for UNLV ended up being Kamani Hamilton isolations. I think they tried to do something else on the second to last possession, but it didn't work. And Kamani Hamilton got points on both of those trips. So that's a big part of the offense. And my question is, can they beat teams up enough to win games, right? Kamani Hamilton is good. I think he's a good player. But can you give him sort of 15 isolations against good opponents and have it work out? Stanford's a pretty good opponent, and it worked out, right? Can Stephen make 3 out of 4 8-foot hook shots or one-handed shots per game this season, right? Is that going to work out? I don't know if they're good enough to do that every game 10, 15 times between them. Maybe. And if they are, then UNLV is probably going to win a lot more than we think in Mountain West play. But here's a stat for you in that game against Stanford. UNLV had 75 points. 48 were in the paint and 16 were at the free throw line. That is 64 paints at the paint or in the free throw line. 11 points everywhere else. They made 3 threes, and I guess there was one shot that didn't come in the paint that was a 2-pointer. UNLV is a bad shooting team, and they just didn't shoot many of them in this game. And I don't think they're going to win games shooting threes because they're not good at it. Would be nice if they can just run past everybody and get layups in transition, but probably not going to be able to do that enough to win games against good teams. Can UNLV win games by just sort of beating you up with these 15-foot isolations, with Kamani Hamilton, Emmanuel Stephen, Tyron Jones? Just give them the ball, let them attack their guy one-on-one, and them being efficient enough at it. I think we'll see a lot of games where they do, and I think we'll see a lot of games where they're just not efficient in that, and UNLV loses because of that. A few other stats from this game. First off, the three-point shooting. The three-point disparity in this game, Stanford didn't shoot that well, 9 of 30. But UNLV, their first half press, by the way, was giving up some open threes, and I think they stopped running it because of that. Stanford just didn't make enough. But UNLV just didn't shoot threes. They only attempted 10 and made 3 of them. And it's hard to get this right because, again, they're a bad three-point shooting team, right? 3 out of 10 improved their season percentage. That's how bad they are. They're a bad three-point shooting team. So they don't need to shoot a lot of threes, but are they going to win games when they shoot 10 and their opponents shoot 30? Because it's obvious to say this in a game that UNLV won by 1 point, but if Stanford hits 1 or 2 more threes, it's a loss, right? And Stanford, if they had shot their season average, makes 1 or 2 more threes in this game. And roster-wise, I don't know that there's a fix to this. Just trying to get to the rim and the free throw line is going to be your best option most of the time. But I'm telling you, there's going to be multiple times this year where I'm talking to you about a UNLV game and they lost because their opponent went 12 of 31 from 3 and UNLV went 2 of 9. Like they're going to get outscored by 30 from the 3-point line in games this year because they're not good enough to shoot them, and they're probably just not going to shoot many of them while everybody else in college basketball shoots a lot of threes. So that's going to happen. They're going to lose games where they might be better at the team everywhere else, but they just get outscored from 3 by 30, and that's the game. So that's a big issue. The other thing that's very interesting with UNLV, their offense is probably at its best when they get out in transition. And the best way to get out in transition is with steals, forcing turnovers there. And two best wins of the season are Stanford and Memphis. Those two teams in those games have turned the ball over at 22% and 23% of the time. That's very good. UNLV's defense for the season has been above average at forcing turnovers. They're not great, but they're not even in the top 100, but they're above average at it. And this is fascinating to me because looking ahead, I would say, all right, UNLV forces a bunch of turnovers. They've got a really, really good chance to win, right? That's going to be their key to victory. But if you look so far this season, the two teams they've played that are the worst at turning the ball over or turn it over the most are Montana and UT Martin. This year, UT Martin ranks 354th in turnover rate, and Montana is 307th. Those two teams are turning the ball over non-stop. But against UNLV, they didn't. So I'd love to tell you, like, yeah, UNLV can beat high turnover teams. That's going to be a key when they play teams that throw it away. They're going to win the game. But the two teams that do that all the time, they didn't beat. And they didn't force turnovers in that game either. The turnover percentages were very low for those teams. Maybe it's just small and these are weird samples, but I wonder if it's a case this year where UNLV's defense isn't actually anything special at forcing turnovers, and they just kind of need some sloppy play. They just need some bad passes or loose dribbles from their opponents, and it's more about the opponent giving the ball away than UNLV actually forcing it. But we'll see how that plays out. But so far, there hasn't really been a correlation between bad turnover opponent and UNLV forcing turnovers. It's been kind of random so far. And the last thing to end the show on today, it's a classic for me if you've been listening to me for a while here. It's bad challenges by basketball coaches. So Josh Pastner actually won 2 challenges in this game. He challenged an out-of-bounds call with 4:09 left in the first half, won the challenge. He got a second challenge because of that. He challenged another out-of-bounds call with 5:47 left in the second half, and he won that one. And I'm here to tell you, even though he won both challenges, they were both bad challenges. I think coaches in the NBA, WNBA, and college basketball are bad at challenges because for some reason they don't account for the value of the play they are challenging. Because here's the important part. The way the challenges work at all 3 levels, you get a challenge. If you lose the challenge, you're done with challenges. You don't get to challenge anything else. If you win the challenge, you get 1 additional challenge. But that's it. You don't get a third one even if you win the second one. So Pastner last night won 2 challenges. And then he was out of challenges for the final 5 minutes of a close game. I don't think coaches should be using their challenges until the final couple of minutes of the game because you need to challenge something that has value. You need to challenge something that is going to dramatically change the win probability for your team, which means you're in a 1-point game. You're in a tie game. There's 45 seconds left. The ball goes out of bounds. Can you challenge that and steal a possession in the final minute? Because your win probability by winning a challenge with 4 minutes left in the first half goes up by 0.5%, maybe. But if you're in a tie game with 45 seconds left and the refs give Stanford the ball and you challenge it and win it, your win probability probably goes from like 40% to like 60%. We might be talking about 20% swings here in win probability if you challenge the right plays. And yes, this means most basketball games, I don't think a coach should challenge because not all the basketball games come down to the final minute. So I don't think coaches should be using their challenges unless we get into these close game scenarios like this one was. Fortunately for UNLV, there wasn't an out of bounds call that went against them that they could have won a challenge on in the final minute. But had there been, they would have just been screwed in the final minute because Pastner had used his 2 challenges. And I think the other problem with this is the other sports don't have to think about the value of challenges, right? Because think about like the NHL. The only thing you can challenge in hockey is a goal. And I know they're changing that for next year. But right now, the only thing you can challenge is goal interference and offside. And only on goals, though. You can't just challenge a random offside that led to a face-off. It can only come on a goal. So it's built into hockey that the only thing you can challenge are the most valuable things in the sport. And in hockey, because there's 6 goals a game, 7 goals a game, whatever the number is, it's very, even if it's the first minute of the game, it's very valuable to take an opponent's goal away because they're only going to score 3 or 4 in a game. So taking away 1/3 or 1/4 of their scoring is incredibly valuable. Basketball is going to have, 30, 40 scoring possessions, maybe even more than that in a game, college basketball. So taking away one scoring possession in the first half isn't as valuable, right? In baseball, you've got, if you run out of challenges and you're in the 8th or ninth inning, you can just ask the umpires to review something. They'll do a crew chief review. Any home run can get automatically reviewed without a challenge. So in baseball, even if you blow your challenges, they'll still replay stuff. And in the NFL, every scoring play is reviewed, every turnover is reviewed. There's replay assist for random things. It seems like it depends on what game you're watching if replay assist comes into play. You could get screwed if you get ruled down at like the 1 yard line and you need to challenge for a touchdown, but you lost your challenges. But even then, in the final 2 minutes, that stuff still gets reviewed. So the other sports, they kind of do auto reviews for important things, or it's the only thing you can challenge. But in basketball, that's not how it works, right? The only way they review thing if you challenge it. And so you should be saving them for the end. The same thing happened with Becky Hammon in the Aces. She won damn near all of her challenges, but she was challenging foul calls or out of bounds calls in the first quarter. It's just like you don't really gain anything from that. You should be saving these for the end. And I'm telling you, UNLV or the Aces, one of these teams is going to lose a game on a bad call in the final 20 seconds that they could have challenged, and they're not going to have their challenge, and I'm going to take a victory lap on this show. I'm going to be insufferable if that happens. So I'm just warning you it's coming because it is going to happen, and I am going to sit here and say, I told you so. You should be saving your challenges. But this has been Technically Correct with Tyler Bischoff. Thank you so much for tuning in. There's some UNLV basketball for everybody that was complaining about not having it on Monday's show. There it is for you. I'll talk to you tomorrow.